This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Everyone in Myriad Treasure Store looked at Xian Yutong. His face began to return to its sallow color and he no longer spoke. Everyone looked disappointed. If Xian Yutong didn't want to say it, no one could force him, even if the Tower Master came. He had always been like this for so many years, and everyone knew that. Inside the enamel plate, although Yunxiao and Xiangzi were fighting fiercely, both of them looked at ease, and it was obvious that they had not used their full strength. But even so, the second defense on the plate was still activated to prevent the aftermath from spreading out. Li Yunxiao, you really have some skills. But, how long will this fight last? You'd better show me your true ability. Xiangzi laughed loudly and suddenly retracted his palm, gathering power in the air. Rays of golden light appeared like wheels and gathered from all directions. They gathered in the palm of his hand and were accumulating power. As you wish. Yunxiao said. His hand suddenly formed seals at a rapid speed, and the power of the seals spread out from his hands. Although the people outside the enamel plate could not feel the power of his palm and fist, they could roughly see it from the flashing defensive light on the plate. At this moment, the enamel plate was filled with a dazzling golden light, and the two figures were almost indistinguishable. Jin Tao's palm. Xiangzi suddenly shouted and flipped his palm down. Golden light bloomed like a resplendent flower. There was a roar between heaven and earth, as if the sky and earth were being overturned. The entire sky became a little dark. Yunxiao's golden seal also suddenly blasted out, gathering the power of the four extremes of heaven and earth, making the already dark sky gloomier, as if a heavy rain was coming, and making it hard for people to breathe. Heaven-Earth Seal. Boom boom boom. The battle between the two of them exploded on the jade plate. The five-colored protective light on the plate trembled, filling the sky with colorful clouds. The gloomy and dark sky was broken by this attack. The dark clouds gradually dispersed and the sky opened up. As for the two people who had made their moves, their bodies were knocked back by this collision. Their chi and blood were in turmoil, and the fighting spirit in their eyes was getting stronger and stronger. I draw. The people below the stage were extremely nervous. Up until now, the two of them were actually evenly matched. I draw. Zhu Keating's expression was serious. He controlled his precision in the duel just now, which made it look like a tie. But, to think that he can achieve such control in a duel with an expert who is one major realm higher than him. Chen Feng, you didn't lose in vain. Chen Feng's face was filled with resentment as he snorted heavily. If his power is greater than his opponent's, why is he controlling it like this? It's better if he doesn't defeat his opponent directly. Chen Qin was puzzled. Zhu Keating shook his head. You don't understand. Right now, the two of them are constantly testing each other's strength. That's why neither of them is willing to show their true cards. Yunxiao's action was also to make the other party scratch his head. He's the best in both strength and intelligence. It's not a good fortune for our blade sect to have such a talent in the merchant union. Shui Luoyan's stomach was filled with resentment when she heard this. She could not help but say, as one of the 7 superpowers, can't your blade sect deal with Li Yunxiao alone? If young Master Chen Feng is defeated again and Li Yunxiao takes first place, the agreement between our two sects will be invalid. When Xiao Jingming heard this, his heart was suddenly filled with joy. He thought to himself that if the contract was invalid, then Chen Feng and Shui Luoyan's marriage alliance would be impossible to mention. This might not be a bad thing for him. He couldn't help but laugh and say, I think Chen Feng is going to lose for sure. Prepare to change his face again. Chen Feng was furious. If Zhu Keating was not here, he would have already taught him a lesson. Zhu Keating glanced at Shui Luoyan and said indifferently, you don't have to worry about that, Miss Shui. Before I came, the two sects had already made a new agreement. No matter what the outcome of this duel was, Miss Shui would have to marry young Master Chen Feng. From now on, all the matters of the Mando Chamber of Commerce will have nothing to do with you. You just have to prepare to be a bride and serve young Master Chenfeng wholeheartedly in the future. What? Shui Luoyan and Xiao Jingming's expressions changed drastically. Xiao Jingming almost couldn't sit still as he said angrily, "When did this happen? Why didn't you know that I came here with you?" Zhu Keating furrowed his brows. In the past few days, he had also discovered Xiao Jingming's intention to defeat Luo Yan. This was also the reason why he and Chenfeng were not on good terms. Otherwise, the two great geniuses of the Blade sect would not have any grudges against each other. Shui Luoyan said coldly, "My marriage is not up to anyone else to decide. I can marry him if he can defeat Li Yunxiao. I, Shui Luoyan, will only marry a strong man. If you can't defeat him, why don't I marry Li Yunxiao? Wouldn't it be better than marrying trash like you? How audacious. Pa. Die." Chun Qin shouted angrily as she sent a slap across Shui Luoyan's face. She was much stronger than Shui Luoyan and her opponent was unable to dodge. A crisp sound rang out as she was hit. "Bitch, you dare to hit her." Xiao Jingming had been so shocked by Shui Luoyan's words that he had not been able to react in time. Now that he saw Shui Luoyan covering her face, he was so angry that he slapped her back without saying a word. Pa. The slap didn't land on Chuanqin's face, but was instead grabbed by Chenfeng. His arm was in great pain, and he said angrily, "Chenfeng, let go of me." Chenfeng flung him away and looked at Shui Luoyan with cold disdain. He said in a cold voice, "But you are nothing in front of me. After I marry you, Chun, Xia, Qiu, and Dong will be your elder sisters, and I'll have them discipline you well." When Chun, Xia, Qiu, and Dong heard this, they were all secretly overjoyed. They all revealed cold and arrogant expressions as they stared at Shui Luoyan. Shui Luoyan covered her reddened face, completely unafraid of Chenfeng's gaze as she sneered, "We'll talk after we win. I've seen too many men who only know how to brag." Chenfeng's face twitched. He coldly turned his head away and continued to stare at the arena. At this moment, in the arena, Xiangzi's expression also became serious. He said coldly, "You're controlling your strength so that I can't see your true strength. You're quite capable. In that case, let's see how long you can keep up with my strength." A ray of light appeared in his hands, and he gradually pulled it apart in front of him, forming a long spear with an astonishing aura. 9th tier profound armament. Yunxiao's heart jolted, and his pupils constricted. It wasn't that he was intimidated by the might of a 9th tier profound armament. It was just that to be able to own a 9th tier profound armament at this level of strength, it definitely wasn't an ordinary identity. He was suddenly even more curious about Xiangzi's origins. "Not bad, you have good eyes to recognize my divine spear of Luo Ho. It's indeed a 9th grade item. As for your true strength, I don't think there's a need to test it anymore, because I'm about to see it." A ball of light burst out from Xiangzi's body and surged into Luo Ho's divine spear. Immediately, the weapon accumulations shook and the entire spear body shook. At this moment, the defense of the entire jade plate automatically activated the 3rd layer of defense. Everyone's expression changed greatly. The enamel plate had blocked the waves of the battle inside and also blocked the spiritual awareness of all the people below, making it impossible to check the situation above. However, the moment Luo Ho's divine spear appeared, just the power of the tool accumulation was enough to create a 3rd layer of defense. One could imagine how powerful it was. With a flip of his hand, the Northern Heaven Frigid Star Sword appeared in Yunxiao's hand. It shone with a cold light, and the sword qi was like a rainbow. This time, he did not have Xiangzi, so he directly brandished the sword and attacked first. Wherever the sword qi passed, lotus flowers bloomed, looking extremely beautiful. What a powerful and beautiful sword technique. The crowd sighed with emotion. This beautiful sword technique, coupled with Yunxiao's ethereal figure, made him look like a fairy. They were so jealous of him. Xiangzi snorted coldly. His spear trembled in the air and shot out. The tip of the spear emitted a cold glint that landed on the lotus flower, destroying it one by one. Clang. Luoho's spear touched the northern heaven cold star sword, and immediately, a circular green light rippled out. Xiangzi used force to press down on the body of the spear, and the northern heaven cold star sword was instantly suppressed, its aura shrinking smaller and smaller. Yunxiao suddenly released his right hand, which was holding the sword, and slapped it on the hilt with a palm technique. The sword immediately flicked up and shot out a beam of sword energy, which then rolled up in the air and slashed towards Xiangzi's forehead. At the same time, a sword radiance appeared in his hand again. Another long sword was unsheathed, drawing a few patterns in the air. Then, he raised the sword and flew up. Xiangzi's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly retracted his spear to strike down at the sword. A green light slashed down, and with a bang, it knocked the northern heaven cold star sword back. Yunxiao's sword and body as one had arrived. After smacking away the sword, Xiangzi held the handle of the spear in front of him to block Yunxiao's flying attack. Bang! A wave of power spread out, and Xiangzi's body was forced to retreat in the air. Yunxiao performed an incantation gesture with his left hand, and the northern heaven's cold star sword was pulled back into his hand. With two swords, he did not want to miss any opportunity. He crossed the swords in front of him, then raised them high, condensing them into two white sword beams above him and slashing them down. After Xiangzi was shaken off by the sword ray, the qi and blood in his entire body were in a state of shock. Suddenly, a feeling of extreme danger welled up in his heart. He saw the two sword rays that had crossed each other form a crooked cross and spread out in the air. In an instant, it covered the entire enamel plate. "Fuck, you're going too far. You're courting death." Xiangzi shouted in anger, and the Luoho divine spear in his hand began to spin. Behind him, the image of a strong man gradually appeared, and the strong man was holding onto the shadow of a spear. As Xiangzi struck out with his spear, the illusionary figure also threw it out. The spear's momentum grew and broke through the surrounding sword qi suppression, turning into a flash of lightning and charging forward. Boom boom boom. The two slashes that seemed to have merged together suddenly collided with the spear light. They actually lasted for an instant before they were broken by the spear light. The entire sword aura was like a broken bamboo as it was disintegrated by the spear aura. The spear beam's momentum was not reduced, and under Xiangzi's control, it pierced straight at Yunxiao. Yunxiao's pupils constricted as he spread his swords like wings and poured a surging power into them. Snowflakes began to fall from the air, and soon, a vast white expanse appeared. What's going on? He's going to take this spear head-on? Everyone was shocked. The spear light of the divine spear had already reached his chest, but Yunxiao still turned a blind eye to it and was still brewing the sword qi between his two swords. Xiangzi's pupils also contracted, and a feeling of being looked down on welled up in his heart. He said coldly, "You're looking for death." Swish. The spear light instantly pierced through Yunxiao's chest as if there was no resistance, then came out of his back and pierced through the air. Xiangzi's expression changed drastically, and he suddenly exclaimed, "Not good." At the moment the spear light broke through Yunxiao's body, he turned into a body of blue lightning and flew toward the spear. The bone-piercing chill on the two northern heaven cold star swords was like a pair of scissors grinding meat. Before the sword qi arrived, the cold air was already threatening, making Xiangzi feel like he had fallen into an ice cave. 3,000 karmic hindrances, Luoho strike. In his panic, Xiangzi's body retreated several times to buy himself some time. The long spear in his hand spun out rays of green light, breaking the cold air that was attached to his body. He brewed a spear power and blocked it in front of his body. Clang. The two northern heaven cold star swords suddenly struck Luoho's spear. A powerful energy spread out rapidly from the point of impact of the three weapons. The green and white light intertwined with each other. Looking through the five-colored light on the jade plate, it was exceptionally beautiful. The two figures were submerged in the strong light. Yunxiao and Xiangzi, who were in the same realm, did not feel as comfortable as the onlookers. The two forces hit their bodies directly, and Yunxiao could not swing his sword in his thunderbolt form, so he could only condense his sword into a solid form. White beams of light shot out of his body, and the moonlight constantly weakened the impact of the green and white forces. The veins on Xiangzi's body were bulging, almost reaching an unbearable level. He had been caught off guard and was forced to defend himself. The bone-chilling cold seeped into his body and destroyed his bodily functions. Damn it! Xiangzi could not help but roar. The endless force from Yunxiao's swords pressed down, as if he wanted to end the match with this one strike. How arrogant! I won't let you have your way. Xiangzi's face contorted, and pu. Sounds came from his body. A series of explosions rang out, and his muscles began to bulge. His expression became extremely abnormal. Yunxiao's pupils constricted as he felt the power coming from the opponent's spear growing stronger and stronger. From the initial bitter defense to the current reversal, a force was sent into his body. Is this the Tao Wu's demon transformation? No, it doesn't look like a demon transformation, but woo-woo. Yunxiao stared at Xiangzi's face with an indescribable shock and strangeness in his heart. He even felt a fear from the bottom of his heart spreading across his body. Not good, it's the power of the bloodline. An extremely strong pressure. This person is also a descendant of the dragon, and the strength of his bloodline is extremely strong. The phantom dragon's shocked voice came from his soul. His voice trembled as he said, "How can I feel such a strong sense of dragon bloodline? My God. He can't be the first-generation direct descendant of the ancient true dragon, right?" Yunxiao was taken aback. It was the pressure of a dragon. No wonder it was so familiar. It was very similar to the feeling coming from the dragon bone pearl, but very different. No wonder he was so interested in the things above the spell tower. It turned out that he was a descendant of a dragon, and the benefits of getting the dragon bone bead would be great. Yunxiao did not have much time to think. The counterforce from his hand grew stronger and stronger, and finally exceeded the limit of his resistance. A huge force burst out and knocked him away with a loud boom, sending his two swords flying out of his hands. A mighty force pressed down on his body, shaking his body so much that he couldn't transform into lightning and escape. He could only constantly channel the power of his physical body to resist it. The Devil Sky armor also condensed into a physical body. Unfortunately, after the demonic chi was dispersed, this armor had almost no spirituality and could only resist some simple attacks. Finally, Yunxiao coughed out a mouthful of blood as he looked ahead in horror. His physical body had been activated to the Supreme Tyrant body, but he still could not resist the monstrous force, and his heart was shaken out. He didn't dare to use the power of the imperishable golden body in front of so many people. If any rumors were to spread, he was afraid that he would immediately attract a fatal disaster. Young Master Yun. Everyone in Tianyuan Trading Company's seats was shocked. Their expressions changed slightly as they looked at the enamel plate in horror. The fact that the attack could be reflected back and make Yunxiao bleed showed how powerful it was. At this moment, Xiangzi was holding on to the tip of the spear. The tip of the spear was pointed on the ground, and an indescribable murderous aura was constantly rushing out of his body. His face was still contorting and changing, and a faint demonic shadow appeared around his body. Just by looking at it, one could feel a tremor coming from the depths of one's soul. Yunxiao was not the only one who was shocked, but all the people in the merchant union were dumbfounded. They did not dare to look at the faint shadow. Oh my God, what was that? Just the phantom image was already difficult to look at. If it directly revealed its true body, wouldn't everyone have to bow down on the spot? Gulp. Chui Bo swallowed hard and said in shock, "Elder Min, where did this person come from? And what is the shadow that appeared beside him?" Elder Min's face was also dazed as she muttered to herself, "That unfathomable power that even I feel terrified of, is this shadow? What is this thing?" Everyone felt dizzy after hearing this. So he didn't know either. At this moment, Tang Jia, who had been unconscious, suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were like lightning as he looked at the Nirvana plate. His expression changed drastically. Luo Ying had been treating him and noticed his awakening and abnormality. He frowned and said, "Tang Jia, what's wrong?" Tang Jia muttered a few words in a low voice that no one could understand, as if he was complaining and dissatisfied. Then, to Luo Ying's shock, he actually soared into the sky without saying a word, turning into a ray of light and flying into the distance. Tang Jia. Luo Ying shouted in confusion, but he did not get any response from Tang Jia. He watched as Tang Jia disappeared into the horizon, in the direction of the Four Extremes sect's encampment. The matter of the Tang tribulation had attracted everyone's attention, but at this moment, most of their thoughts and energy were focused on the phantom image beside Xiangzi, so everyone was only distracted for a moment. Tang Xian's face turned serious and she snorted lightly. He probably got scared and ran away. After all, he's already a half-human, half-demon existence. Perhaps the illusory image on Xiangzi's body made him even more afraid. Tang Xian herself didn't believe these words, she just said a few words to ridicule Tang Jia, which made Luo Ying frown. But the shadow beside Xiangzi was really too terrifying. He didn't know what it was, and even he was shocked. Not to mention the participating martial artists, even all the martial emperor powerhouses were shocked as they looked on in horror. Yunxiao, who was in the enamel plate, was the first to bear the brunt. If it were not for his extremely strong soul power, he would not have been able to withstand the pressure. Luo Qingyun was also a descendant of the dragon, right? Why is there such a huge difference? Yunxiao was drenched in cold sweat as he began to circulate the Great Expansion divine technique to calm his soul and dispel the fear in his body. Following the circulation of the Great Expansion divine technique, the demonic dragon also slowly calmed down and said in a deep voice, "The difference in bloodline is too great. How can they be compared? The shadow next to this person seems to be the son of a dragon. Although it's not an ancient true dragon, it was a rank 10 god realm existence in ancient times. This person should be the descendant of that dragon. Damn it!" Yunxiao cursed. It's just an ordinary technique, but it has such a powerful dragon's might. How can we fight this? His bloodline power is strong, but it seems like he can't control it, the demon dragon said in a deep voice. That's why he can only release his dragon's might. He can't cause you any real harm. I understand. It's just that I'm a little scared to attack the son of a dragon. Yunxiao gritted his teeth and made a hand seal. The two northern heaven cold star swords on the ground flew up and, under the control of his hand seals, rose into the air, hanging there and emitting streams of cold air, which made him feel very warm. Xiangzi's face became extremely ugly. On his forehead, two transparent bumps appeared. It was as if there were horns on them that were about to burst out, but they were unable to do so. The illusionary image of the son of the dragon flickered and returned to his body, and the pressure gradually disappeared. Holding his spear, Xiangzi stared at Yunxiao and said coldly, "I didn't expect to reveal this state so quickly. It's really a surprise. However, this is also the end of this martial arts competition." He clenched the spearhead with force, and a strong wind burst out, shaking the plate and causing it to emit a defensive light. Yunxiao felt a huge force hitting his face, and he could not stand straight. Everyone below the stage turned pale with shock. This was too shocking. Just the power of a strong wind could make the enamel plate emit a defensive light. How strong was the power on Xiangzi's body at this moment? Even Li Feiyu and Chen Feng were shocked, and their hearts were in turmoil. They asked themselves, would they not lose if they were in their place? The two of them had no confidence at all. The answer was unknown. 3,000 barriers are untainted by dust. Luo Ho, one purple gold spear. Attack! Xiangzi shouted softly. His long spear created sparks on the ground. The black shadow of a dragon suddenly appeared on the tip of the spear. The spear and body became one as it pierced through the sky. A sharp light pierced out and covered the entire heaven and earth. Everything on the jade plate was within the attack range. Yunxiao's face was extremely solemn. Even if Xiangzi's current state was not at the peak of martial honor, he was not far from it. He formed a hand seal and the two swords flickered. One of the swords had a rainbow-like momentum and the starlight on it was extinguished. The other sword had a chi flow in the sky and the sun appeared inside it, as if it was the first light of dawn. Under his control, the sword chi of the two long swords seemed to have a spirit of its own. It was about to break through the swords and condense. The power on the swords shook and tore apart the space suppressed by the spear light, breaking through all the restrictions.